In the small brick office of Mitchell Construction on the outskirts of Millbrook, Robert Bob Mitchell, 68, adjusts his reading glasses as he reviews the morning's contracts. The September sun streams through windows that haven't been cleaned in months, casting long shadows across the cluttered desk where 3 generations of construction plans lie scattered. The smell of fresh coffee from the old percolator mingles with the faint aroma of sawdust that seems permanently embedded in the wood-paneled walls. Bob runs his weathered fingers over a framed photo of his late wife Margaret, taken at their 25th wedding anniversary. Her smile still lights up the room, even in death. Behind him, certificates and awards cover the wall. Small Business of the Year, 1995, Community Builder Award, 2010. Each one a testament to 35 years of honest work in a town where handshake deals still mean something. The morning air carries the distant sound of hammers and saws from the construction site across town, where Bob's crew is finishing the new elementary school library. It's the kind of project that makes him proud, building something that will serve the community for generations. His calloused hands, marked by decades of manual labor before he transitioned to management, trace the blueprints with practiced precision. The office door opens with its familiar creak, a sound Bob has been meaning to fix for months, but somehow never gets around to. David Mitchell, 42, enters wearing an expensive Navy suit that costs more than most of Bob's employees make in a week. His blonde wife, Jennifer, follows, her designer heels clicking against the worn linoleum floor like a countdown timer. She surveys the modest office with barely concealed disdain, her perfectly manicured fingers clutching a leather portfolio that probably costs more than Bob's monthly rent. "Morning, Dad," David says. But there's something different in his tone today. Gone is the casual warmth of a son visiting his father. Instead, there's the measured cadence of a businessman preparing for a negotiation. The smile doesn't reach his eyes, and Bob notices how David's gaze keeps drifting to the company financial statements visible on the desk. Bob studies his son's face, the same blue eyes as Margaret, but lacking her kindness. When did those laugh lines around David's eyes become worry lines? When did his visits become so calculated? David fidgets with his wedding ring, a nervous habit he's had since childhood, but now it seems more deliberate, like he's rehearsing for something important. "David, Jennifer," Bob says, gesturing to the mismatched chairs in front of his desk. The furniture has seen better days, the brown leather cracked and faded, stuffing visible in one corner where Bob's German Shepherd, Rex, used to scratch before he passed 2 years ago. "This is unexpected. You usually call before coming by." Jennifer perches on the edge of her chair, as if afraid the worn fabric might contaminate her pristine white blouse. She opens her portfolio with practiced efficiency, revealing documents that Bob can't quite see from his angle, but the letterheads look official: lawyers, accountants, medical professionals. "We've been thinking, Dad," David begins, his voice taking on that patronizing tone that Bob has grown to hate, "about your future. About our family's future." The office suddenly feels smaller, more confining. Bob's coffee grows cold in his favorite mug, a chipped ceramic piece with "World's Greatest Dad" painted in fading blue letters. David gave it to him 15 years ago for Father's Day, back when his visits were genuine expressions of love rather than business transactions. "I have a future," Bob replies evenly. "I have a business to run, employees depending on me, contracts to fulfill. The Henderson project alone will keep us busy through Christmas." Jennifer and David exchange a look, quick but not quick enough to escape Bob's notice. It's the kind of look Margaret used to give him when she thought he was being stubborn about seeing the doctor. But this look carries something else, something that makes the hair on the back of Bob's neck stand up. "That's exactly what we're concerned about," Jennifer says, her voice honey-sweet but with an undertone of steel. "You're pushing yourself too hard, Bob. The stress, the long hours, the responsibility. It's not healthy for someone your age." Someone your age. The phrase hangs in the air like a threat. Bob is 68, not 98. His mind is sharp, his health is good, and his doctor just gave him a clean bill of health at his last physical. But Jennifer speaks as if he's already 1 foot in the grave. "I appreciate your concern," Bob says carefully. "But I feel fine. Better than fine, actually. Work keeps me young." David leans forward, and Bob catches a whiff of expensive cologne. Nothing like the aftershave David used to wear, the drugstore brand that reminded Bob of his own father. Everything about his son has become expensive, polished, distant. "Dad, we've been researching some options for you. Places where you could retire comfortably, where you wouldn't have to worry about business stress or maintaining that big house." The big house. Bob and Margaret's dream home, a modest 2-story colonial on Maple Street where they raised David, where Margaret tended her rose garden, where Bob built a workshop in the basement and taught David how to use tools. The house where Margaret took her last breath, holding Bob's hand and making him promise to take care of their son. "What kind of places?" Bob asks, though he suspects he already knows the answer. Jennifer slides a glossy brochure across the desk. "Sunset Manor Retirement Community," the cover reads, featuring a photo of elderly people playing chess and smiling at the camera with that vacant, medicated happiness that comes from having all decisions made for you. "It's beautiful, Bob," Jennifer says with enthusiasm that sounds rehearsed. "Private apartments, 3 meals a day, social activities, medical care on-site, and the best part? No responsibilities, no stress, no worries. No freedom," Bob thinks, but doesn't say. He's visited enough friends in places like Sunset Manor to know what they really are. Warehouses for the elderly, where children park their parents when they become inconvenient. The waiting list is usually 2 years, David adds. "But we've spoken with the administrator. They have an opening next month if we move quickly." Move quickly. As if Bob's entire life can be dismantled and relocated in 30 days. As if 35 years of building a business and a reputation can be packed into boxes and forgotten. "And what about the company?" Bob asks, though he suspects this is where the conversation has been heading all along. David's mask slips for just a moment, and Bob sees something that chills him. Anticipation, greed, the look of a man who's been waiting for his inheritance and is tired of waiting. "I would take over, of course," David says, attempting to sound reluctant. "It's not what I want, but I know how much the business means to you. I couldn't let you sell it to strangers." How generous, Bob thinks. How noble of David to sacrifice his comfortable suburban life to take over $1 million construction company. "I've been thinking about this for a long time," David continues, warming to his subject. "The company needs new energy, fresh ideas. We could expand into commercial development, maybe even start a real estate division. The possibilities are endless." Bob watches his son's eyes light up as he talks about transforming Mitchell Construction into something bigger, more profitable, more impressive. Gone is any mention of preserving what Bob built, of honoring the company's reputation for honest work and fair dealing. "Of course, we'd keep the Mitchell name," Jennifer adds. "Mitchell and Associates has a nice ring to it, don't you think?" Associates. Not and Son, which Bob had always imagined would be David's choice when the time came for transition. Associates, a word that suggests David plans to bring in partners, investors, people who never swung a hammer or earned a callus, but know how to maximize profit margins. The afternoon sun has shifted, and now it streams directly through the window behind Bob's desk, creating a halo effect that makes everything seem surreal, dreamlike. He thinks of Margaret, of the promises he made to her, of the hopes they shared for David's future. This isn't what they envisioned. "I need to think about this," Bob says finally. "It's a big decision." "Of course," David says quickly. "Take all the time you need, but don't wait too long. That opening at Sunset Manor won't be available forever." After they leave, Bob sits alone in his office as the shadows lengthen and the sounds of the workday fade. He picks up the Sunset Manor brochure and studies the faces of the residents, all smiling, all clean and well-fed, all looking like they've given up on life. He opens his desk drawer and pulls out a business card he's kept for 3 years. Dr. Elizabeth Warren, elder law attorney. Margaret had insisted he meet with her after watching a news report about elder abuse. Just in case, Margaret had said. You never know when you might need protection from the people who are supposed to protect you. At the time, Bob had thought Margaret was being paranoid. Their David would never hurt them. Their David loved them, respected them, would always take care of them. But looking at the Sunset Manor brochure, remembering the look in David's eyes when he talked about expanding the business, Bob realizes that Margaret might have been right about a lot of things. He reaches for his phone and dials Dr. Warren's number. It's time to find out exactly what his legal options are, and what safeguards he can put in place to protect himself from a son who seems to have forgotten that love and money aren't the same thing. The next morning arrives gray and drizzly, typical September weather in Millbrook. Bob sits in Dr. Warren's office, a space that feels more like a living room than a law office, with comfortable chairs and family photos on the desk. Dr. Warren herself is in her 50s, with silver-streaked hair and the kind of direct gaze that suggests she's seen every form of family betrayal imaginable. "Tell me about your concerns, Mr. Mitchell," she says, pouring him coffee from a thermos that smells like it was brewed strong enough to wake the dead. Bob explains yesterday's conversation, the sudden urgency about retirement, the convenient opening at Sunset Manor. Dr. Warren listens without interruption, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. "How long has your son worked for the company?" she asks. 15 years. Started right after college as a project coordinator, worked his way up to assistant manager. He knows the business. I'll give him that. And the financial arrangements? Is he listed as a beneficiary in your will? He inherits everything when I die. The business, the house, my savings, it's all going to him. Dr. Warren nods grimly. Mr. Mitchell, what you're describing is unfortunately common. Adult children who become impatient with their inheritance and decide to accelerate the process. The legal term is undue influence, and it often starts exactly the way you've described. Sudden concern about the parent's welfare, urgent need for protection, and a convenient solution that happens to benefit the children financially. Bob's coffee turns to ash in his mouth. Are you saying David is trying to steal from me? I'm saying the pattern is concerning. The rush to get you into a retirement facility, the emphasis on your age and supposed frailty, the assumption that he should take over your business. These are classic warning signs. She opens a thick file folder and pulls out several documents. Let me explain what could happen if you're not careful. First, they could petition for guardianship, claiming you're no longer competent to make decisions. If successful, David would have legal control over all your assets. Second, they could pressure you into signing over power of attorney while you're in a vulnerable state, perhaps after a medical procedure, or during a period of grief or depression. Bob feels a chill that has nothing to do with the autumn weather. What can I do? Several things. First, we establish clear documentation of your mental competency. I'll arrange for you to have a comprehensive cognitive evaluation by a geriatric psychiatrist. Second, we create safeguards, a revocable trust that protects your assets, specific instructions about your care preferences, and legal documents that make it harder for anyone to claim undue influence. She slides a business card across the desk. This is Dr. Patricia Chen, one of the best geriatric psychiatrists in the state. She specializes in competency evaluations for exactly these situations. If David tries to claim you're not mentally fit, you'll have professional documentation proving otherwise. Bob takes the card, his hands steadier than they've been since yesterday's meeting. For the first time in 24 hours, he feels like he's not just a victim waiting to be exploited. There's something else, Dr. Warren says. If you're concerned about David's motives, you might want to do some investigating of your own. Financial records, recent communications, anything that might reveal his true intentions. That afternoon, Bob returns to his office with a new sense of purpose. If David is planning something, there will be evidence. People don't orchestrate complex schemes without leaving traces, especially people who think their targets are too trusting or too naive to notice. He starts with David's desk, using the master key that Margaret always kept for emergencies. The first drawer contains the usual office supplies, but the second drawer is locked, unusual for someone who supposedly has nothing to hide. Bob finds the key in David's coffee mug, a hiding place that would fool no one except someone who trusted their victim completely. Inside the locked drawer, he discovers a manila folder labeled Estate Planning Confidential. The contents make Bob's blood run cold. A business valuation of Mitchell Construction dated 6 months ago. $1.2 million. A real estate appraisal of Bob's house. $280,000. A financial analysis of Bob's savings and retirement accounts. Another $150,000. David has been planning this for half a year, methodically cataloging every asset he stands to inherit. But the most damning document is a printout of an email exchange between David and Jennifer, dated just 3 days ago. David, the old man is more stubborn than we expected. We might need to consider other options. Jennifer, my mother went through this with Grandma. Sometimes you have to be firm for their own good. The important thing is getting him into Sunset Manor before he realizes what's happening. David, once he's there, everything becomes easier. Isolated from his support network, dependent on us for information and contact with the outside world. My lawyer says we can petition for conservatorship after 6 months if we document any signs of confusion or poor judgment. Jennifer, 6 months? That seems like a long time. David, it's worth the wait. Once I have conservatorship, I can restructure the business, sell the house, liquidate everything. We're talking about almost $2 million, Jenny. $2 million that's just sitting there while he plays at being a businessman. Bob reads the email 3 times, each reading making him feel sicker. His own son, discussing him like he's already dead, planning to strip him of everything he's worked for, everything Margaret helped him build. The phrase that haunts him most is, the old man. Not dad, not my father, just the old man. As if Bob is some stranger whose inconvenient existence stands between David and his inheritance. Bob photographs the documents with his phone, then carefully returns everything to its original position. David can't know that his plan has been discovered, not yet. If Bob is going to protect himself, he needs time to plan, time to put safeguards in place. That evening, Bob sits in his living room, the same room where he and Margaret planned their future, where they dreamed about David's wedding and the grandchildren they hoped would fill the house with laughter. The silence is deafening. He calls Dr. Chen and schedules the competency evaluation for the following week. Then he calls his accountant, his lawyer, and his financial advisor. If David wants to play games, Bob will make sure he's playing by rules David doesn't know exist. The next few days pass in a strange limbo. David and Jennifer visit twice more, each time more insistent about the urgency of Bob's decision. They bring more brochures, more testimonials from other families who made the difficult but necessary choice to move their elderly relatives to care facilities. We're only thinking of your welfare, Dad, David says during their third visit, his voice heavy with manufactured concern. What if you fall in that big house? What if you have a medical emergency at work? Who would find you? Bob nods and makes appropriate responses, but inside he's cataloging every manipulation, every lie, every moment when his son reveals his true character. The David sitting across from him is a stranger wearing his son's face, speaking in his son's voice, but motivated by greed rather than love. Jennifer has become bolder, more aggressive in her suggestions. Sunset Manor has a wonderful memory care unit, she mentions casually. Just in case cognitive issues develop later, it's so much easier when everything is under one roof. Memory care. The euphemism makes Bob's stomach turn. She's already planning for the day when they can claim he's suffering from dementia, when they can move him from independent living to the locked ward where visitors are monitored and residents are medicated into compliance. Dr. Chen's evaluation takes 3 hours and covers everything from basic cognitive function to complex problem-solving scenarios. Bob performs perfectly, scoring in the top percentile for his age group. The written report states clearly that he shows no signs of cognitive impairment, diminished capacity, or any condition that would prevent him from making informed decisions about his care and finances. Armed with this documentation, Bob meets again with Dr. Warren to finalize his protection strategy. They create a revocable trust that places his assets beyond David's immediate reach, establish clear criteria for any future care decisions, and draft a comprehensive advance directive that specifically prohibits placement in any facility against Bob's will unless he's genuinely incapacitated. The key, Dr. Warren explains, is documentation. If David tries to claim you're incompetent, we have professional evidence to the contrary. If he tries to pressure you into signing anything, the trust protects your assets. If he attempts to have you declared a danger to yourself, your advance directive makes your preferences clear. Bob signs the documents with a steady hand, each signature an act of defiance against a son who no longer sees him as a father, but as an obstacle to overcome. 2 weeks after David's first visit, Bob receives a call that changes everything. Tom Brennan, owner of Brennan Construction, Mitchell's biggest competitor, wants to schedule a meeting. "I heard through the grapevine that you might be considering retirement," Tom says, his voice careful and professional. "If you're thinking about selling, I'd like to discuss options." Bob hasn't told anyone about considering retirement, which means David has been making inquiries, testing the waters, seeing what the business might be worth on the open market. The discovery confirms Bob's worst fears. David isn't just planning to take over the company, he's planning to sell it. "What kind of options?" Bob asks. "I've been wanting to expand into your market segment for years. I'd be interested in acquiring your client list, your equipment, maybe some of your key personnel. We could discuss terms that would be very favorable to you." Bob agrees to meet, not because he wants to sell, but because he needs to understand the full scope of David's betrayal. If his son is secretly soliciting offers for the business, Bob needs to know what his life's work is worth to the people who want to destroy it. The meeting with Tom Brennan takes place at a restaurant 20 miles outside Millbrook, far enough from town that David won't accidentally discover it. Tom is a big man with calloused hands and an honest face, the kind of man Bob might have been friends with under different circumstances. "I'll be straight with you, Bob," Tom says over coffee and pie. "Your son approached me 3 weeks ago, asking hypothetical questions about what I might pay for Mitchell Construction. He said you were thinking about retirement, but wanted to explore all options before making any decisions." Bob's coffee cup rattles against the saucer as he sets it down. "What did you tell him?" "The truth. Your company is worth approximately $1.2 million in assets, but the real value is in your reputation and client relationships. Those are worth another $300,000 to the right buyer, someone who would honor your commitments and maintain the quality standards you've established. $1.5 million. More than Bob had ever imagined his modest company was worth, and exactly the number that would transform David and Jennifer's comfortable middle-class lifestyle into something approaching wealth. "Did David seem surprised by the valuation?" Bob asks. Tom shakes his head. He had already done his homework, knew the asset values, had copies of your major contracts, could quote your annual revenue figures. He was well prepared, too well prepared for someone who was supposedly just exploring options for his father. David has been planning this for months, maybe years, waiting for the right moment to strike. "If you were interested in selling," Tom continues, "I could make an offer of $1.5 million, with the closing structured to protect you from any legal challenges. I know how these family business transitions can get complicated. Legal challenges." Tom knows something, or suspects something, about David's intentions. "What kind of legal challenges?" Bob asks. Tom leans back in his chair, choosing his words carefully. Sometimes family members have different ideas about what's best for an elderly business owner. Sometimes they try to undo sales they don't approve of. A properly structured deal can prevent that kind of interference. Bob realizes that Tom isn't just offering to buy his business. He's offering to help him prevent David from stealing it. The question is whether Bob is ready to take such a drastic step. That night, Bob sits in his workshop in the basement, surrounded by the tools he's collected over a lifetime of building and creating. His hands move automatically as he sands a piece of maple, part of a jewelry box he's making for Margaret's grave. Working with his hands helps him think, helps him process the impossible situation his son has created. Margaret's voice seems to whisper in the sawdust-scented air. "Trust but verify, Bobby. Love them with all your heart, but keep your eyes open." He'd forgotten that advice in the years since her death. Forgotten that love without wisdom is just vulnerability waiting to be exploited. David had counted on that vulnerability, had counted on Bob's trust and grief and desire to believe the best about his only child. But Bob isn't vulnerable anymore. He has legal protections, financial safeguards, and most importantly, he has knowledge. He knows what David is planning, and he has the power to stop it. The question is what price he's willing to pay for that protection, and whether he can live with the consequences of outsmarting a son who no longer deserves his trust. The decision, when it comes, arrives with startling clarity. Bob wakes up the next morning knowing exactly what he's going to do, as if Margaret herself had whispered the answer in his dreams. He calls Tom Brennan and accepts the offer, $1.5 million for Mitchell Construction, with closing scheduled for the following Friday. The deal will be confidential until the papers are signed, giving Bob 1 week to prepare for the confrontation that will change his relationship with David forever. But Bob has one more surprise planned, something that will teach his son the most important lesson of his life, that actions have consequences, and that love, once betrayed, can never be fully restored. The money from the sale won't be going to David. It won't be going to Bob's retirement account or his savings. Instead, every penny of that $5 million will be donated to the Margaret Mitchell Memorial Foundation, a charity Bob establishes to help elderly people protect themselves from financial abuse by family members. David wants his inheritance early. He can have it. All of it. Every last penny he's entitled to receive from the business he spent 6 months planning to steal, which is exactly nothing. Friday morning arrives clear and cold, the first real taste of autumn in Millbrook. Bob dresses carefully in his best suit, the navy blue one Margaret helped him pick out for David's wedding. He wants to look dignified when he destroys his son's dreams. The closing takes place in Tom Brennan's lawyer's office, a modern space that smells like leather and success. Bob signs his name on 47 different documents, each signature transferring another piece of his life's work to a man who will honor it instead of exploiting it. "It's been a pleasure doing business with you, Bob," Tom says as they shake hands. "I promise you, I'll take good care of what you've built." Bob believes him. Tom Brennan has spent 30 years building his own construction company with the same values Bob used: honest work, fair dealing, respect for employees and customers. Mitchell Construction will survive and thrive under his ownership. At 2 p.m., Bob calls David and asks him to come to the office for an important discussion. He doesn't mention Jennifer, but he's not surprised when she arrives with David, her legal portfolio clutched in her manicured hands like a weapon. "Dad, you look serious," David says as they settle into the familiar chairs. "Is everything all right?" "Everything is perfect," Bob replies. "I've made my decision about retirement." Jennifer leans forward eagerly. "That's wonderful news, Bob. Sunset Manor will be so pleased. When can you move in?" "I'm not moving to Sunset Manor," Bob says calmly. "I'm not retiring. In fact, I'm busier than ever." David's smile falters. "I don't understand. I sold the company, David, this morning, to Tom Brennan." The silence that follows is deafening. Jennifer's portfolio slips from her hands and hits the floor with a sound like a gunshot. David's face goes through a series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, anger, and finally, panic. "You can't do that," David says, his voice barely a whisper. "You can't sell my company." "Your company?" Bob asks mildly. "That's interesting. I thought it was my company. Built with my money, my sweat, my reputation. When did it become yours?" David stands up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "You know what I mean. I've worked here for 15 years. I was supposed to inherit it. We had an understanding. We had an understanding that you would earn the right to inherit it," Bob corrects. "That you would prove yourself worthy of carrying on what your mother and I built. Instead, you proved that you see me as nothing more than an inconvenient obstacle to your inheritance." Jennifer finds her voice first. "Bob, this is a mistake. You're not thinking clearly. The stress of making such a big decision alone, it's affected your judgment." Bob smiles. "My judgment is fine, Jennifer. In fact, I had a complete cognitive evaluation 2 weeks ago. Dr. Patricia Chen found me to be in perfect mental health, with no signs of impairment or diminished capacity. Would you like to see the report?" David's face goes pale. "You've been planning this for 2 weeks," Bob confirms. "Ever since I found the documents in your desk, David, the business valuation, the real estate appraisal, the emails discussing how to get the old man out of the way so you could cash in on my life's work." Jennifer gasps. "You went through David's private papers. I went through papers in my office, in my building, discussing my assets and my future. There's nothing private about plans to steal from me." David slumps back into his chair, the fight gone out of him. "Dad, you don't understand. We weren't trying to steal anything. We were trying to help you. Help me into a nursing home so you could liquidate everything I own. Yes, I read the emails, David. I know about the 6-month plan to have me declared incompetent. I know about the conservatorship petition you were preparing. I know exactly what kind of help you were planning." The accusation hangs in the air like a toxic cloud. Jennifer tries to deny it, but her voice lacks conviction. David doesn't even attempt a defense. He knows he's been caught. "What did you get for it?" David asks finally. "How much did Brennan pay you?" $1.5 million, Bob says. "More than you thought it was worth." David does quick math in his head, and Bob can see the moment when he realizes the magnitude of his loss. $1.5 million that he was counting on, planning for, that would have set his family up for life. "Where's the money now?" Jennifer asks, her voice sharp with panic. Bob reaches into his desk drawer and pulls out a legal document. "The Margaret Mitchell Memorial Foundation for Elder Protection. Every penny of the sale went to establish a charity that helps elderly people protect themselves from financial abuse by family members." The words hit David like physical blows. He stares at his father in disbelief, unable to process what he's hearing. "You gave it away," he whispers. "You gave away my inheritance." "I gave away money that you tried to steal from me while I was still alive," Bob corrects. "Money that you thought you could get by warehousing me in a nursing home and claiming I was incompetent. Money that you valued more than your relationship with your father." David explodes out of his chair. "That's not true. We love you, Dad. Everything we did was because we love you." "No," Bob says quietly. "Everything you did was because you love money. Love doesn't involve deception, manipulation, or planning to have someone declared mentally incompetent so you can steal their assets." Jennifer tries one last desperate gambit. "Bob, you're making a mistake. David has worked for this company his entire adult life. He deserves something for his loyalty." "He got something," Bob replies. "He got 15 years of steady employment, health insurance, paid vacations, and a salary that allowed him to buy a house and start a family. His loyalty was compensated every week with a paycheck." Bob stands up and walks to the window, looking out at the empty construction yard where bulldozers and excavators once sat. Tom Brennan's crew will move the equipment to his facility next week, and then this building will be just another empty office space for rent. "The truly sad part," Bob continues, "is that if you had just been honest with me, if you had asked instead of scheming, I probably would have given you the company, not sold it to you, given it to you. Because that's what parents do for children they love and trust. David's voice breaks. Dad, please. There has to be a way to fix this. I'll do anything. Bob turns back to face his son, and for a moment his expression softens. This is still his child, the boy he taught to ride a bicycle and swing a hammer, the young man who walked down the aisle at his wedding with tears of joy in his eyes. There is a way to fix this, David, he says gently. You can learn from it. You can accept that actions have consequences. You can spend the rest of your life proving that you're better than the person you've shown me these past few weeks. But the money is gone. It's helping other elderly people protect themselves from exactly what you tried to do to me. Maybe that's a better legacy than Mitchell and Associates Construction ever would have been. David and Jennifer leave without another word. Jennifer clutching her empty portfolio, and David moving like a man in shock. Bob watches their expensive car pull out of the parking lot and realizes he feels lighter than he has in months. He's free. Free from the worry that his son is plotting against him, free from the fear of being manipulated into a nursing home, free from the weight of leaving his life's work to someone who would destroy it for money. Most importantly, he's free from the burden of pretending that David is still the son he and Margaret raised, instead of the stranger he's become. That evening, Bob sits on his front porch as the sun sets over Millbrook. The house feels too big and too quiet, but it's his house and he'll live in it until he chooses otherwise. Down the street, children play in their yards while their parents tend gardens and wash cars. Normal families living normal lives, untroubled by the kind of betrayal that destroys trust between generations. His phone rings. The caller ID shows David's number, but Bob doesn't answer. He's said everything he needs to say, and David has heard everything he needs to hear. What happens next is up to his son. The phone stops ringing, then starts again. This time, Bob turns it off entirely. Tomorrow, he'll listen to the messages, if there are any. Tonight, he wants to sit in peace and remember what it felt like when family was about love instead of money. A car turns into his driveway, and for a moment, Bob's heart lifts, thinking David has come back to apologize, to try to rebuild what they've lost. But it's not David's car. It's Dr. Warren's sedan. I hope you don't mind me stopping by, she says as she climbs the porch steps. I heard about the sale. News travels fast in a small town, Bob replies. Tom Brennan called me. He wanted to make sure you were okay, said the meeting with your son didn't go well. Bob offers her Margaret's chair, the rocking chair where his wife used to sit and shell peas or read romance novels on summer evenings. Dr. Warren settles in with a sigh. How do you feel? She asks. Sad, Bob says honestly. Relieved, angry, proud, it's complicated. Grief usually is. And make no mistake, Bob, what you're feeling is grief. You've lost your son, just as surely as if he had died. Maybe more so, because when someone dies, you can remember them at their best. When someone betrays you like this, it colors every memory. They sit in comfortable silence as darkness falls over Millbrook. Porch lights begin to flicker on throughout the neighborhood, windows glow with the warm light of families gathering for dinner, and somewhere in the distance a dog barks at a passing jogger. Do you regret it? Dr. Warren asks finally. Bob considers the question carefully. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that David chose money over family. I regret that Margaret didn't live to see who our son really became, because it would have broken her heart. But the decision itself? No regrets there. A man who would warehouse his own father for inheritance money isn't a man who deserves an inheritance. David got exactly what his actions earned him. Dr. Warren nods approvingly. The foundation is a good idea. You'll help a lot of people avoid what you went through. That's the hope. Maybe some other father won't have to discover that his son sees him as nothing more than an asset to be liquidated. After Dr. Warren leaves, Bob sits alone on his porch until the night grows too cold to bear. Tomorrow he'll start the next chapter of his life. a life without the burden of a business to run or a son to disappoint him. 3 weeks pass before Bob hears from David again. The call comes on a Tuesday evening while Bob is reading in his study, surrounded by the books Margaret collected over their marriage. Mysteries and biographies and gardening guides that smell like lavender and memories. "Dad?" David's voice sounds hollow, defeated. "Can we talk?" "We can talk," Bob says carefully. "But if this is about the money, there's nothing to discuss. What's done is done." "It's not about the money." "Well, not entirely. Jennifer left me." Bob sets down his book, a biography of Harry Truman that Margaret bought him for his last birthday. "I'm sorry to hear that. She said she couldn't be married to someone stupid enough to lose $1.5 million. Said I should have handled you better, been smarter about it." David's laugh is bitter, self-deprecating. "Funny thing is, she's right." "Jennifer was right about a lot of things," Bob says. "Just not the things that matter." There's a long pause on the line. Bob can hear David breathing, can imagine him sitting in that expensive house that now feels too big and too quiet, just like Bob's. "I keep thinking about Mom," David says finally. "About what she would say if she knew what I'd done." "Your mother loved you unconditionally," Bob replies, "but she also taught you right from wrong. What do you think she would say? That I forgot who I was supposed to be. That I let greed turn me into someone she wouldn't recognize." It's the first honest thing David has said in months, maybe years. Bob feels something shift in his chest, not forgiveness exactly, but perhaps the possibility of it, somewhere in the distant future. "Your mother also believed people could change," Bob says. "That mistakes, even terrible ones, could become lessons if we let them." "Is it too late?" David asks, and his voice sounds like the little boy who used to crawl into Bob and Margaret's bed after nightmares, seeking comfort and safety. "Too late for what?" "To be your son again, to earn back your trust, to prove that I'm better than what I showed you." Bob looks at Margaret's photograph on his desk, at her smile that somehow manages to be both gentle and fierce. What would she want him to say? What would serve justice? And what would serve love? "I don't know," Bob says honestly. "Trust, once broken, is the hardest thing to rebuild. But maybe if you're willing to do the work, we can find out." "What kind of work?" "The kind that proves you've learned from this. The kind that shows you understand what you almost destroyed." David is quiet for a long moment. "The foundation," he says finally. "Mom's foundation. You said it helps elderly people protect themselves from family members who want to hurt them." "That's right. I could help. With the foundation. I know I'm probably the last person you'd want involved, but I understand the problem better than most people. I know how these schemes work because I almost carried one out." Bob considers this. There's a certain poetic justice in having David work to prevent the very crime he almost committed. More importantly, it would give him a chance to see if his son has truly learned from his mistakes or if this is just another manipulation. "The foundation needs volunteers," Bob says carefully. "People to answer phones, to help elderly people understand their legal options, to provide support during difficult family situations." "I could do that. It doesn't pay anything. In fact, it costs. The foundation asks volunteers to contribute a minimum of 20 hours per week for at least a year." "I have the time," David says. "Jennifer took half of everything in the divorce, and I had to sell the house to pay the lawyers. I'm living in a one-bedroom apartment now, working as a project manager for a company in Springfield. 20 hours a week is nothing compared to what I owe you." "You don't owe me anything, David. You owe yourself the chance to become the man your mother and I thought we were raising." "Then let me try. Please." Bob makes his decision with Margaret's voice whispering in his ear. "Give him a chance, Bobby. Not because he deserves it, but because that's what love does. It leaves the door open for redemption." "There's a volunteer orientation next Friday at 7 p.m., Bob says. "First Presbyterian Church, the Fellowship Hall. If you're serious about this, be there." "I'll be there." "David?" "Yes?" "This isn't about earning your way back into my will. The money is gone, and it's staying gone. This is about whether you and I can find a way to be father and son again without the business between us. I understand. Do you? Because if you're doing this thinking it will somehow get you back into my good graces, you're wasting both our time. Dad, I lost everything that mattered because I was so focused on money I forgot about love. I'm not making that mistake again. After David hangs up, Bob sits in his study for a long time, thinking about second chances and the complicated mathematics of forgiveness. He doesn't trust David yet. Trust will have to be earned through actions, not words. But for the first time since this whole nightmare began, he has hope that his son might still be salvageable. Friday evening arrives with the first snow of the season, light flakes that dust the church parking lot like powdered sugar. Bob arrives early to help set up chairs and prepare materials for the new volunteer orientation. 12 people have signed up, mostly retirees who want to help others, a few middle-aged social workers, and David. Bob watches his son enter the fellowship hall, stamping snow off his boots and looking around nervously. David has lost weight, and his clothes, a simple button-down shirt and khakis, are a far cry from the expensive suits he used to wear. He looks older, sadder, but somehow more real than he has in years. The orientation is led by Sarah Martinez, a social worker who specializes in elder abuse cases. She explains the scope of the problem. An estimated 5 million elderly Americans are victims of financial abuse each year, with family members responsible for 60% of the cases. The typical victim, Sarah explains, is a widowed person over 70 with substantial assets and at least one adult child who has access to their finances. The abuse often starts small, borrowing money that's never repaid, taking over bill-paying duties, encouraging the victim to sign documents they don't fully understand. Bob watches David's face during this presentation, sees the shame and recognition there. His son is hearing his own story told as a cautionary tale, understanding perhaps for the first time how close he came to becoming a statistic. Our volunteers, Sarah continues, provide support, education, and advocacy for victims and their families. Sometimes that means helping someone understand their legal options. Sometimes it means sitting with them while they make difficult phone calls or attend court hearings. And sometimes it means helping family members understand the damage they're causing before it's too late. After the formal presentation, volunteers break into small groups to discuss their assignments. David ends up in Bob's group, along with 3 other volunteers, discussing how to support victims who are struggling with feelings of betrayal and loss. The hardest part, says Eleanor Watson, a retired teacher whose brother tried to steal her inheritance, is accepting that someone you love could hurt you so deliberately. It changes how you see every memory, every interaction. David nods slowly. How do you get past that? How do you trust anyone again? Very carefully, Eleanor replies, and only after they've proven they've changed. Bob finds himself studying his son's face, looking for signs of sincerity or manipulation. What he sees is genuine pain, genuine remorse, and what might be the beginning of genuine understanding. After the meeting, David approaches Bob in the parking lot as snow continues to fall around them. Thank you, he says simply. For what? For letting me try. For not giving up on me completely. Bob considers his response carefully. I haven't forgiven you, David. I may never forgive you completely. But I'm willing to see if you can earn the right to be my son again. That's more than I deserve. Yes, it is. Don't waste it. Over the following months, Bob watches his son work with victims of elder abuse, sees David listen to stories that mirror his own planned betrayal. He watches David comfort an 80-year-old woman whose daughter emptied her savings account, sees him help a man whose son forged his signature on property deeds. Slowly, carefully, Bob begins to see glimpses of the boy he and Margaret raised. Not the greedy, manipulative man who tried to steal his inheritance, but the child who used to build birdhouses in Bob's workshop and bring Margaret flowers from the yard. The change isn't immediate or complete. There are setbacks, moments when David's old entitlement surfaces, times when Bob wonders if his son is truly reformed or just better at hiding his motivations. But gradually, incrementally, trust begins to rebuild. A year after the foundation orientation, Bob receives a call from Sarah Martinez. "I wanted you to know," she says, "that David has become one of our most effective volunteers. Last month alone, he helped prevent 3 cases of financial abuse. Families listen to him because he understands the temptation they're facing." How so? He tells them his story, about how he almost destroyed his relationship with his father for money, about what he lost and what he learned. It's powerful testimony. That evening, Bob calls David for the first time since their reconciliation began. "Sarah tells me you're sharing your story with other families." "It helps," David says. "When people hear what I almost did, what I lost because of it, they start to understand the real cost of financial abuse. It's not just about money. It's about destroying love. That can't be easy for you. It's the least I can do. Every family I help stay together is, I don't know, it feels like penance." Bob thinks about penance, about justice, about the strange ways that redemption sometimes works. David has become a cautionary tale, but also a success story, proof that people can change, that terrible mistakes can become powerful lessons. 2 years after the sale of Mitchell Construction, Bob receives an unexpected visitor. Tom Brennan stands on his front porch with a manila envelope in his hands and an expression Bob can't quite read. "I have something for you," Tom says as Bob invites him in. Inside the envelope are financial statements showing the performance of Mitchell Construction under Tom's ownership. The company has thrived, expanding into new markets while maintaining the quality standards Bob established. More importantly, Tom has kept every one of Bob's former employees, honoring their years of service and treating them with the respect Bob always insisted upon. "You gave me more than a business," Tom says. "You gave me a reputation built over 35 years. I wanted you to know I haven't wasted it." But that's not why Tom came. At the bottom of the envelope is a check made out to the Margaret Mitchell Memorial Foundation for $150,000. "My portion of the profits from the past 2 years," Tom explains. "I know you donated the sale proceeds to the foundation, but I felt like the ongoing success of the company should benefit your wife's charity too." Bob stares at the check, overwhelmed by the gesture. $150,000 will fund the foundation's operations for years, will help hundreds of elderly people protect themselves from the kind of betrayal David almost perpetrated. "This is incredibly generous, Tom." "It's good business. The foundation's work protects people like my own parents, like my in-laws. Someday, maybe it'll protect me and my wife. Besides," Tom grins, "it's a good tax write-off." After Tom leaves, Bob calls David to share the news. His son's reaction surprises him. "I want to match it," David says immediately. "David, you don't have that kind of money." "I'll get it. I'll take out a loan if I have to. It's important." "Why?" David is quiet for a long moment. "Because Mom's foundation saved my relationship with my father. Because it gave me a chance to become someone better. Because maybe matching Tom's donation will prove that I'm finally putting love ahead of money." It takes David 18 months to raise the money, working extra jobs and living in Spartan conditions. He sells his car and buys a used one, moves to an even smaller apartment, takes on freelance construction work in his spare time. When he finally presents the $150,000 check to the foundation, Bob realizes that his son has truly changed. This isn't the David who tried to steal his inheritance. This is a man who understands the value of sacrifice, who has learned to put principles ahead of profit, who has discovered that earning something makes it more valuable than simply inheriting it. On the 3rd anniversary of the sale, Bob and David stand together in the Margaret Mitchell Memorial Foundation's new offices, surrounded by thank you letters from families who avoided financial abuse, by photos of elderly people who kept their independence because volunteers like David helped them understand their rights. "Do you ever regret it?" David asks, echoing Dr. Warren's question from years ago. Bob considers the question, looking around at the tangible evidence of good work being done in Margaret's name. I regret that it was necessary. I regret the pain it caused both of us. But I don't regret the outcome. Even though you lost your business? I didn't lose my business, David. I saved it. Tom Brennan honors what I built, treats my former employees well, maintains the standards Margaret and I established. If I had let you take over when you were planning to steal it, you would have destroyed everything good about Mitchell Construction. David nods slowly. I know that now. I didn't then, but I know it now. And I didn't lose my son, Bob continues. I found him. The real David, the one Margaret and I raised, the one who got lost for a while but found his way back. They stand together in comfortable silence, father and son reunited not through inheritance or obligation, but through the harder work of earning back trust and proving worthy of love. Outside the foundation offices, snow begins to fall again, the same gentle flakes that were falling the night David first attended volunteer orientation. But this snow feels different. Not like an ending, but like a beginning, covering the old wounds and disappointments with something clean and new. Bob thinks about Margaret, about the promises he made to her, about the son they raised together. He kept his promise to take care of David, but not in the way either of them expected. Sometimes taking care of someone means saying no, means letting them face the consequences of their choices, means loving them enough to hold them accountable. What happens now? David asks. Now we keep working, Bob says. You keep helping families stay together. I keep learning how to be your father again. We keep honoring your mother's memory by doing good work in her name. And the money? Do you ever think about what would have happened if I had inherited it? Bob smiles, thinking about the hundreds of people the foundation has helped, the families that stayed together because volunteers provided support and education, the elderly people who kept their independence because they learned to recognize the warning signs of financial abuse. The money went exactly where it was supposed to go, he says. It's doing exactly what it was supposed to do. Some inheritances are meant to be earned through love and sacrifice, not taken through manipulation and greed. As they walk toward their cars, Bob realizes that he has given David the most valuable inheritance possible, not money or property, but the chance to become a man worthy of his mother's love and his father's trust. It's an inheritance that can't be stolen or squandered because it must be earned anew every day through right actions and moral choices. David has spent 3 years earning that inheritance, and Bob suspects he'll spend the rest of his life proving worthy of it, which is exactly as it should be. The best things in life, love, trust, respect, family, are never simply given. They must be earned, protected, and renewed through constant effort and unwavering commitment to doing what's right. In the end, Bob didn't just save his money from his son's betrayal. He saved his son from becoming the kind of man who would betray his father for money, and that, he knows, is worth far more than any business or bank account could ever be. The Margaret Mitchell Memorial Foundation continues its work, funded by the sale of a construction company and sustained by the love of a father who chose justice over easy forgiveness and a son who chose redemption over resentment. In helping others protect themselves from financial abuse, they found a way to heal the wounds that greed and betrayal inflicted on their family. It's not the ending Bob would have written 3 years ago, when he still believed David was the son he and Margaret thought they had raised. But it's a better ending than he dared hope for when he first discovered his son's betrayal. Because this ending includes not just justice, but redemption. Not just consequences, but growth. Not just punishment, but the possibility of love renewed and trust rebuilt. And Margaret, Bob believes, would approve.